Starting off at number 10 now, we have the skull. Twiggy Twangdoodles said, "My dad bought my mom an actual human skull for Christmas a few years back. He wrapped it in a box some toy came in. My parents are weird, this wouldn't have raised an eyebrow at my house. Unfortunately, we did our gift exchange at my maternal grandmother's, who is much less creative with gifts. My dad and brother waited for this to be the last gift given. It was a big presentation. Upon opening it, my mom squealed and shoved it back in the box. She was excited but knew it wouldn't go over well. Of course, now everyone wants to know what is in the box. My grandma insists my mom take out the mysterious gift and show it to the room. My aunt started screaming, made her kids leave the room. My grandma almost fainted and told us to get out of the house immediately. 'Twas hilarious." Yeah, I mean, that does kinda sound funny, but maybe not in the moment. It's one of those Christmas stories you may laugh at months or even years later. They also never mention exactly how their dad got their hands on an actual human skull. Like a real one. It's not like you can just go and pick that up at the store. I have a lot more questions when it comes to this story.
Coming in at number 9 is Father Christmas, the big jolly man himself. Now most people believe his origins can be traced back to St. Nicholas, who we'll talk about later on. But through research I found out that Harper's Weekly magazine published what's meant to be the first ever illustration depicting the modern Santa Claus, and that was in the 1860s, so it's really not that modern. In that illustration he's wearing green robes, not the red ones we're used to, and he was even mixed with the legend of the Green Man. The Green Man was this person who ruled the forests and woods in pagan belief, and last time I checked, pagans and Christianity are not the same thing. In Germany, for example, Father Christmas had a dark side, and that came in the form of Krampus, who was said to be his evil helper. He was the bad cop to Santa's good cop. So Santa was either St. Nicholas, he was either a pagan forest man, or he was a Batman and Robin duo with Krampus. Any of which are that good actually, now that we think about it. Santa Claus, you've done me wrong. Betrayed me.
Oh, coming in at number 8 we have Farmhand Rupert, and you don't want to party with him. Farmhand Rupert is a terrifying foe. He's a mean-spirited trickster of a man. Sure, we're going to talk about the naughty list and the nice list, but Farmhand Rupert has a different way of dealing with insolent children. As part of German legend, Farmhand Rupert walks around the hood, or the countryside, and asks unsuspecting children if they can pray. If they can, he gives them a delicious gingerbread gift. If they can't, he gives them random pieces of junk. If they refuse, what does he do? He beats them with a bag of ashes. Thanks for the beating, Farmhand Rupert, you gingerbread wielding creep.
Number 7 we have La Befana. What happens when you cross the Wicked Witch of the West with Santa Claus? Well, you get La Befana. She does a lot of the things that Santa does. She goes around from house to house and leaves gifts for good kids and coal for the bad ones. She uses magic to get around and has great fashion sense. But she also does a bunch of witch things, like riding around on a broomstick and being dressed in all black. I know it's winter, but you can spice it up a little, girl. Throw in some nice greens, some nice reds, all those little things. On top of all this, she doesn't only leave coal for bad kids, she leaves bad luck. What are you doing? Maybe these kids are being bad because they have a terrible home life? I don't think you should be leaving them more bad luck. That just doesn't make things any better. Just maybe help them out. The coal's enough.
Moving on to number 6 now, we have Bloody Axe. This story actually comes from an old horror comic, and the pictures you're seeing now are from just that. It's written from the perspective of an 8-year-old boy. He would lie very still under the old moth-eaten quilt his mother had made for him. He would be wide awake and listen out for sounds. On one Christmas Eve, he heard the front door closing and the clomp, clomp, clomp of his father's mud-caked boots, and then there was the sound of dripping on the stairs. Drip, drip, drip. Then his father would pass by his doorway and the light would cast his shadow on the bedroom wall and the shadow of the bloody axe he always carried in his hands. At breakfast the next morning he slowly asked his mother where his father had been last night. She looked at him with sad eyes but never said a word. By the end of this story though, we learn that there is a connection with the rumours of the nearby axe murderer and his father's return every night. Let's just say it doesn't have a pretty ending.
Coming in at number 5 are Christmas parties. Now everyone loves those cheeky Christmas parties where there's Secret Santa and a bunch of alcoholic hot chocolate and everyone's just getting fat and drunk. Who wouldn't love that? I love that. Well, firstly, I'm gonna hit you with some facts. Now Christmas wasn't always celebrated on the 25th. The birth of Christ was only confirmed on that date 300 years after the fact. Before that, his birth was marked on at least 3 different dates, one in March, one in Jan, and one in June. It was just all over the place. Coincidentally, December 25th was also the same day of the Roman festival of Saturnalia and the winter solstice. This festival was dedicated to the Roman god Saturn and it involved continuous unrestrained drinking, the role reversals between masters and their slaves, criminals were allowed to run rampant and do whatever they wanted, schools were closed, the rich were encouraged to give presents to the poor so they wouldn't be robbed. Christmas parties are wholesome now, but they started off as proper shit shows.
Alright everyone, moving on to number 4 now, we have the clown puppet. There was once 3 sisters, aged 15, 12 and 7. They told their parents what they wanted for their Christmas gift of choice. The oldest asked for a laptop, the middle for an iPad and the youngest for a small doll. On Christmas Day, the oldest and middle daughters got what they asked for. They were over the moon. The youngest daughter didn't receive a doll though, instead she got a clown puppet. She thought it was cute and so she kept it. 2 days later, the youngest daughter disappeared. The next Christmas, the oldest daughter asked for an iPad and the middle child asked for a clown puppet. Sure enough, 2 days later, she disappeared. The next Christmas, the last remaining daughter asked for a clown puppet in memory of her sisters. She disappeared as well. The heartbroken parents never recovered. They eventually became so poor they had to sell everything for money. One day they went into the attic to look for items to sell. That's when they saw, in the darkness at the very back, the clown puppet was sitting on a throne made from lollipop sticks, arranged all around it were the severed heads and limbs of the 3 missing girls.
Cruising into number 3 is werewolves. I know what you're thinking, what do werewolves have to do with Christmas? If they are going to be linked to any kind of holiday, it's probably going to be Halloween. But I'm here to surprise you with the news that there is a dark myth behind werewolves and Christmas Day. The urban legend goes that anyone who was born on Christmas Day would turn into a werewolf. The 1961 movie called The Curse of the Werewolf explains the legend that being born on December 25th is mocking Jesus Christ, so you must be punished. But you don't turn into like an actual werewolf, you're a human who gets possessed and turns into this like werewolf-like monster thing. So you better plan out your pregnancies and hope your baby isn't born on Christmas Day.
At number 2 we have KALLIKANTZAROS. Very cool name, but not a cool guy. This creature would just show up on Christmas and terrorize villages for 2 weeks and then disappear. Very rude. KALLIKANTZAROS is a goblin that lives in packs under the earth. This monster kinda looks like a little monkey creature thing with razor sharp teeth, like a little goblin. And to top it off, it will come and steal your baby. If you have a baby born between the 26th of December and the 6th of January, you better watch out because this little demon will try to claw its way into your home and take your newborn baby and then turn it into one of the little monkey goblins like itself. You guys like it when I do this? Remember those commercials that were like Lego my ego? This is like that, but you would be crying because a monster stole your baby.
Finally, number 1, Krampus might actually be real. Krampus is half goat, half demon creature.
Everybody, hold on to each other.
Krampus usually comes out during the Christmas season, and he punishes children who have misbehaved, so exactly like how Santa Claus does. Maybe Santa gives Krampus his naughty list. I mean, did you guys ever wonder what Santa does with his naughty list?
At number 10 we have BELSNICKEL. What if I read them all out like I was Borat? A BELSNICKEL. That would be good, you guys would like that. I bet you didn't know this, but Santa used to have a sidekick. BELSNICKEL used to be the Robin to Santa's Batman. The two would travel around the world to give candies and presents to kids. He sounds like a good guy. Why would he be on this list? Well, BELSNICKEL had his own way of doing business. Firstly, in the legend of BELSNICKEL, this guy wouldn't wear a nice red suit and sleigh bells. No, he would wear worn down rags. This is a terrible choice because it's so cold out on Christmas. You should choose something that is more appropriate for the weather. And also, you only work 1 day a year, dude. You couldn't find something nice to wear on that 1 day you have to go out. He also would wear a mask with a long tongue so people couldn't figure out who he was. This guy wasn't in it for for the fame. Probably the scariest part about him is he would carry a long wooden stick that he would use to beat kids who've been bad. God, he really wanted to take the parenting to a new level. He's like, you guys aren't going to do it properly, so I'm going to do it for you.
Moving on to number 9 now, we have Christmas tree decorations. This is a story from Scary for Kids about a girl called Juliet who was decorating a Christmas tree. Her mum was working late, and so when she finished with the tree, she sat down to watch some TV. It was then that she heard a scratching noise at the door. She looked through the peephole to see a man outside. He was a large, bearded guy in a red suit with fluffy white trim. He banged on the door loudly. Juliet asked, "Who's there?" The man said he was Santa Claus and that he wanted to come in because he was cold and tired and hungry. Juliet didn't believe him. She told him that her mother wasn't home and she wanted him to leave. His face began to go red and twist with anger. He knocked even harder and growled,
It's Santa Claus, Juliet. Have you laid out some milk and cookies for me, Juliet? You know how much Santa loves his milk and cookies.
Honestly, it's a creepy story from start to finish, and it only gets worse for Juliet from there. All I'll say is make sure you don't read it right after you've eaten.
At number 8 we have The Window. This one comes from 20-year-old Jason, who said this happened to him when he was 11 years old. Now, he lived in a small town in Texas where he basically knew everyone in his town, so he never really grew up scared of being out in the streets at night or walking home later than usual. I wish I had that problem. I'm always scared walking at 5 PM home, but that's because I'm a girl. Anyway, his bedroom happened to be on the ground floor of his house and his window overlooked his street. Towards Christmas time back in 2010, he was trying to go to bed one night but heard some noise coming from his window. He looked over to see some branches of a tree rustling but just assumed it was the wind. Jason tried going back to sleep but then heard his window being tampered with. It sounded like someone was trying to open it from the outside. He sat up straight away and saw a tall figure dressed as the Grinch standing right outside his window trying to open the window. As soon as the figure saw Jason, he held up a knife in his hand and started laughing before running off. Jason, freaking the hell out, ran and woke his parents up and they called the police. The culprit was never found, but Jason never watched the movie after that, and he can't even talk about it without having a panic attack. I'm with you there, Jason. If I went through that, I would be exactly like you.
Next up at number 7 now, we have The Boy Who Killed Santa Claus. This one was written by Mark Allen Gunnels. It's about a 7-year-old boy called Henry Childers. He asked his mum to stay up past 10 on Christmas Eve one year, but she warned him that if he didn't go to sleep, Santa wouldn't come that night. He had hoped that Santa would get things right this year. Last year, he asked for an Xbox, but he got a PlayStation instead. His mum told him not to worry, Santa was probably all out of Xboxes, but Henry had not forgotten. Henry had a rage inside of him. He had been plotting all year. He knew he was too little to fight Santa, but he also knew that Santa liked to have milk and cookies. He also knew that food and drink can always be poisoned. Finish the story to find out what happened to the boy who killed Santa Claus. It's a good one.
So urban legend has it that Santa Claus, Father Christmas, Père Noël, whatever you want to call him, the legend says that he has a naughty list and a nice list, which is pretty concerning, not least to mention that he sees you when you're sleeping and he allegedly knows when you're awake. Creepy. Those on the nice list are rewarded with gifts and those on the naughty list receive lumps of coal. Coal is something that you throw in a fire, which basically seems like a thinly veiled threat from Santa to me. The whole thing is like a weird mind control game for kids. There are allegedly ways to check the naughty and nice list too. I went on the North Pole Times to check if I was nice, and I was, but then I started checking other names and, well, this happened. You sure about that, Santa? You sure?
Okay, at the number 5 spot now, we have Hans Trapp. Hans is essentially the Christmas boogeyman in one part of France. He is said to be the anti-Santa, although he started out life as a normal man. He was rich, greedy, and all-round evil. He worshipped Satan and was then expelled from the Catholic Church because of it. Eventually, he was exiled to the forest and used to catch and eat children by posing as a scarecrow. One day, he was about to eat a boy he had captured, but was struck by lightning and killed as a punishment from God. That didn't stop him though, and he is still said to visit young children at Christmas, dressed as a scarecrow to see how they've behaved.
At number 4 are stockings. Now, I've really always wanted my own stocking with my name on it just hanging above the fireplace, but alas, my dreams are still just dreams. Now, filling stockings with treats is all fun and games now, but its origins are rooted in poverty and illness. Who would have thought? The tradition apparently started when a 4th century bishop, St. Nicholas, heard an old man complaining about how he didn't have any money to supply each of his 3 daughters with a dowry. And back then, dowries were a very big deal. Any girl that didn't have a dowry wouldn't be allowed to get married and probably would have become a concubine in order to sustain herself. Now, St. Nicholas's heart went out for this old man so much that he snuck into their house at night and saw that they had hung some stockings above the fireplace to dry. He stuffed them with bags of gold, and the impoverished family lived happily ever after.
Next up at number 3 now we have Marry Lwyd. This tradition originates from South Wales in the UK and involves a zombie horse. Yes, Marie is a zombie horse. Marie would rise from the dead at Christmas and wander the streets with human zombies to remind the living of their existence. Marie wants to get into people's houses, and the only way to keep her out would be to engage her in a battle of wits through rhyming. That's right, to stop this skeletal zombie horse from entering your home at Christmas, you basically have to rap battle it. If that doesn't sound like a terrifying nightmare, I don't know what does.
Coming in at number 2, we have FRAU PERCHTA. Merry Christmas! Hop hop hip hurrah! Oh look, it's the organ witch, FRAU PERCHTA. Don't like her. She can stay away from me. This nightmare from Germany and Austria appears during the 12 days of Christmas right up until the Epiphany. She is said to be a direct descendant of the goddess of nature, and she generally lives in the woods all year round outside of the 12 days of Christmas, where she enacts judgment on the townsfolk. It is said that she loves to reward good people, but she has gruesome punishments for the sinful ones. She scoops out their internal organs and replaces them with garbage. Thanks, FRAU PERCHTA. That'll learn him. She also isn't the greatest looker, not that I'm judging. I am, however, judging the organ scooping though. That's just uncalled for.
Finally, at number 1 is down the chimney. So hopefully the only person coming down your chimney is Santa Claus, because we really don't have time for any other shady assholes to be coming through there. But we have had a lot of shady assholes creeping into the homes of families through chimneys, and it is not okay. European legends tell us of malicious supernatural creatures that used to break into houses via the chimney. In the Middle Ages, it was thought that witches came into houses through chimneys and robbed cribs and the babies inside them. In Greece, the KALLIKANTZAROS goblins were the ones that crawled through the chimney and terrorized families and just stole stuff from them. In conclusion, nothing good has ever come down a chimney other than Santa Claus. Let me just put that out there.
Starting this list off, in at number 10 we have the gruesome family murders. Christmas Day is supposed to be, full of laughter and cheers, but you might be shocked to learn that over the years there has actually been a ton of murders that have happened on Christmas Day, December 25th. One murder that stands out from the rest happened on December 25th in 1929. The Lawson family went into the town to get a family portrait taken, but once they arrived back home, well, that's when all hell broke loose. The father, Charlie Lawson, picked up a gun and started to shoot his family. He killed his wife, his daughters, and every member of his family except his oldest son because, well, he wasn't home at the time. Eventually Charlie shot himself, but no one knows exactly what caused him to blow his fuse or what his true motives were. That's why this massacre remains such a mystery even to this day. Alright, moving on, number 9, let's talk about mincemeat pies. These delicious looking desserts right here. Well, you might not actually be saying that for long. Well, the mincemeat pies has become a very popular Christmas dish, while legends has it that these desserts were invented back in the 16th century by cannibals. The recipe today calls for fruits, spices, cinnamon, nutmeg. There's also herbs in there, but let's just say that those weren't the only ingredients in this. Well, there was a time where these pies used to have meat in them, but it's rumored that that was stopped so people didn't have to guess what type of meat was actually in these pies, because you never know if people tried to follow the old traditions and maybe slip in some human meat.
Moving on to number 8 now, we have The Figure. This one comes from Arthur H, who shared his story on cagemom.com. He said, "My mother, to whom I was very close, passed away in 1964 when I was 17 years old. I left home that year and moved to Ontario from Nova Scotia. In 1969, I met a girl who I will call Karen, and we got married in March of 1970. In December of 1971, we were expecting our first child. We were living in a small 1.5 bedroom bungalow. There was a fireplace in the living room. My wife and I loved the fireplace, and we had it lit every night. It was Christmas Eve 1971, and we had just finished putting the gifts under the tree, and a nice fire gave off a beautiful glow. On the tree, one string of lights, which was supposed to flash, had stopped several days before. It was 5 minutes to midnight when the fireplace suddenly just about went out, and a string of lights started to flash, and the other lights stopped flashing. My wife and I were sitting on the floor, and it had become very chilly in the room. I looked over to my lazy boy chair, and a figure was sitting there. My mother, with a big beautiful smile on her face. My wife, who had never met my mother, said she could see the same thing. This ghost never spoke, but just kept looking at me and my wife and smiling. At 12 midnight, the fire in the fireplace started up again, and the lights on the tree stopped flashing, and the others started flashing again. I looked over in the chair, and the ghost was gone. No matter what I did to those Christmas lights, they never flashed again.
Coming in at number 7, we have The Elf on the Shelf. Okay, listen up. In my opinion, The Elf on the Shelf is absolutely terrifying. It's become very popular with parents these days, but the gangly looking elf has been in popularity since the book of the same name came out in 2005. The book is all about elves who visit kids' homes and watch them to determine whether or not they're naughty or nice. The book now comes with actually little creepy blue-eyed elves, and you can have them in your home. The product description says that they are Santa's eyes and ears in your house. Hello, surveillance state of Santa. You're invading my privacy. A police state is actually no laughing matter, and the elf on the shelf is like a threat to kids. Do you seriously want them to grow up believing that they're being what? I don't know. Are we normalizing this? I don't think we should.
Now at number 6 are baubles. I've literally always wanted to decorate a Christmas tree. It's been my dream for my entire life, and I've never done it. Just remember, you guys, if I die and I didn't do it, just remember my soul will not rest. It will come back to haunt you. Now traditionally, the act of hanging toys and treats from your Christmas tree was German in origin, but baubles and glass blown spheres date back to the 17th century and originated from a very spooky idea in Britain and Ireland: witch balls. Yup. Now witch balls were these glass spheres that had silver inside them and were believed to shoo away evil spirits. When they were first created, they were put in windows to neutralize the evil eye of any passing witch by reflecting it back at her or confusing her with the pattern. People thought the bright colors of the balls would entice and trap the witch and other dark spirits inside of it. Some people even filled them with holy water for even more protection. Either way, they somehow moved from the window to the tree. I don't know how, but I'm guessing it was because people wanted even more protection during a holiday that was so very holy. I think that's a pretty good guess.
Moving on to number 5 now, we have The Carol Singers. This is a story based on The Vanishing House by Bernard Capes. The storyteller said that when they were a boy, their grandfather and father were alcoholics who never worked. They could play instruments though. On one Christmas Eve, they took him Christmas caroling with them, door to door. It was a dark night, snow was falling and the wind cut through them like a knife. They came to a big mansion decorated with Christmas lights. The grandfather knocked on the front door and they began to play some old Christmas carols. When the door finally swung open, in the dim light they could see a young woman stood holding a tray of glasses in her hands. She picked up a glass and handed it to the grandfather, who excitedly took it. The boy looked up to a window above and saw a hideous face peering out of the shadows. He looked back at the woman in the doorway and her face had twisted hideously too. They would live to regret the day they ever came to that mansion and the grandfather taking that glass.
At number 4 are KALLIKANTZAROS. Now these Greek goblins are talked about in Turkish, Siberian, Bulgarian and Greek folklore, and they're meant to live underground. Legend has it they spend their whole lives sawing down the world tree, which would result in the world ending. Either way, they always get close to sawing it down completely around Christmas time, so they take a break and go above ground to terrorize humans, because apparently we deserve that. But when they go back underground, they realize the world tree has somehow healed itself, and then they spend the next year trying to saw it down again. It's said that kids born during the 12 days of Christmas are at risk at transforming into these goblins, so I mean, if your birthday's around this time, sucks to suck, dude. Sorry not sorry!
Next up at number 3 now, we have the GRITHER. He told them the story of the grifter, the most awful thing in the world. He lives in a cave at the North Pole. The coldest, wettest place on Earth is where the grifter makes his home. He sleeps in the wreck of a ship. He doesn't mind the cold and he doesn't mind the wet, but the thing he hates most of all is to hear someone say his name. He has very good ears and they get bigger every time his name is spoken anywhere on Earth. Sometimes his ears get so big he can use them to fly. At this point, Steffa said she didn't like the story. It was scaring her. It's too late now, the mother said. We've already mentioned his name. The grifter is probably on his way to our house this very minute. Those words will come to haunt them before this story ends. Alright, at the number 2 spot now we have Strageli. Strageli is the sort of demonic looking helper to PERCHTA the witch, someone we talked about earlier in the video. You might wonder how PERCHTA manages to slice open all those naughty kids. Well, Strageli helps. He will go around and eat the offerings left out by people in the hope of PERCHTA's blessing. If he comes across any naughty kids before PERCHTA does, he will rob them of everything they own, throw them up into the air, and then tear them into pieces. That makes PERCHTA's belly slitting almost seem normal, except not really. None of this seems normal.
And finally, at number 1 is Père Fouettard. This French legend translates to Father Whipper or Old Man Whipper, which I mean already we're off to a very bad start. So Fouettard is Santa's right-hand evil man. Legend has it he used to be a butcher that craved eating children, so he decided to do just that. Him or his wife lured 3 kids to his butcher shop somehow and killed them, chopped them up and seasoned them with salt of course, and then ate them. Santa came to the rescue and resurrected the boys because he can apparently do that, and took Fouettard captive and made him his servant. And now his job is to punish bad kids on Christmas by spanking the shit out of them and slaughtering them into one of his stews, which I don't know how Santa condones, but I guess we're just gonna push it under the rug and pretend he doesn't know what's going on.
Starting us off at number 10 is the legend of the poisonous poinsettia. They are a very popular Christmas decoration because their leaves turn a bright red color when they bloom throughout their flowering period, which is November to March. It's safe to say that millions of them are sold each year, but you might think twice after I tell you about the urban legend that is linked to them. For decades now, there has been a dark myth that has people believing one poinsettia leaf can kill a human child. It has been a dire warning that goes around every Christmas, warning people not to bring these plants home if they have kids or pets. Some people believe that the plant actually contains a deadly poison. Apparently there has been a reported case that when a child even rubbed up against one of the plants, his face broke out into this brutal rash. So if anyone buys you one of these plants for Christmas, they are probably trying to kill you.
Coming in at number 9 is JOULUPUKKI, aka the Christmas buck or Christmas goat. And this Finnish myth terrified kids growing up because I mean just the look of it is bad enough. Said to have demonic looking horns and hooves, the buck goes around in tight leather pants and a fur trimmed red leather coat. Kinda sounds like the villain him from the Powerpuff Girls who no one really knew what he was, but he was just weird and creepy. Anyway, around Christmas time it goes around finding naughty kids so it can beat them to death, which I mean is a bit much. Like what if I'm naughty this year but nice next year? Like give me a chance. I don't deserve to get beaten to death because I had a bad year. Rude.
At number 8 we have JOULUPUKKI. This is a big cat that will eat you the day after Christmas if you wear your new clothes too soon. What? Why? I have so many questions about this thing and I don't get it. I'm so confused. It's not like a tiger or a lion or something. It's just a massive house cat and it wants to eat people with fresh clothes because I think they taste better. On top of this massive cat killing humans, it's owned by Grilla the Troll, a nasty character from folklore who we might break down in this video. I don't know.
Filling at number 7 slot is the Tomten. Now this little gnome is part of Scandinavian folklore and honestly he looks quite cute, but he's not. Sweet but psycho, you know, kinda like me. This Christmas monster is very easily offended and if he finds a naughty kid, he does one of 4 things. He either beats you half to death, kills your livestock, drives you insane, or kills you with his poisonous bite. Why are gnomes so pesky? They're never doing anything right. I hate them.
Coming into number 6, we have Unto Us a Time Has Come. So this is a popular song at Christmas time in Germany. The only problem is that the most popular version of the song at this time of year was a rewrite by a prevalent Nazi, Paul Herrmann. Herrmann redrafted this song to remove some of the more religious tones, which were problematic for the Nazi regime. The song itself is harmless, it's about walking in the snow, but the history behind it is much scarier.
At number 5 we have Krampus. Seems like every character who has ever gotten popular has an evil version of themselves. Superman has Bizarro, Hulk has the Abomination, and I am the good version of our fellow most amazing host Ayman Hassan, who is evil to her core. And Santa Claus is no different. He's got Krampus, who sounds like some grumpy old man. This guy does exactly what you think an evil Santa would do. He tortures kids who are on the naughty list, which seems like a bit harsh. Do you think they had a pitch meeting where this guy was like, I know you do the whole coal in the stocking thing, but what about we torture them to death? And Santa was like, man, can you get that dude with the stick back in here? This guy is like, oh, this is so over the top. You're too much, buddy. We'll beat him, we're not gonna torture him to death, my god. Krampus has a demonic body, kinda looks like a goat man thing. If he was in an episode of South Park, he would be called Man Goat Christmas. Half man, half goat, half Christmas.
At the number 4 spot now, we have La Befana. La Befana is an old Italian Christmas witch. Her story comes from Italian folklore that some say dates right back to Roman times. There are many origin stories for her, but one of the stranger ones says she wasn't always a witch. She used to be just an ordinary woman with a child who she loved with all her heart. Tragically, her child died, and the grief sent Befana crazy. She heard the news that Jesus had been born though, and so she set out to look for him, thinking that he was actually her son. She found him and gave him gifts. In return, Jesus gave her the gift of being the mother to every child in Italy, and to give them gifts at Christmas. So, if you're ever in Italy on Christmas Eve and catch sight of a broom, say hi to the witch.
Coming in at number 3, we have the Ghostly Gathering. Poland's beautiful castle, the Warwol Royal Castle, was built high upon Warwol Hill in the 1500s. Old Polish legend says that within the belly of the hill there is a cave where an ancient great dragon used to live, although the fearsome beast was defeated. The hill is shrouded in mystery and magic and is an important spot for the history of the Polish nation. It seems that the urban legend also has it that in the hill there is a grand chamber, and in that chamber on every Christmas Eve evening all of the former kings of Poland hold a special ghostly council. I don't know what happens to the queens, I guess they're not invited. Anyway, it's said that they produce a magical energy that protects Krakow.
Now at number 2 are the Yule lads. Lads. Sorry, that was my inner British humour coming out. Anyway, we're not lads on tour, we're the Yule lads. Either way, the Yule lads are the 13 sons of Grilla and Lepeludi, and they're literally a bunch of evil pranksters. They harass the whole population, and each one of them have a specific name that goes along with the things that they do. Names like Meat Hook, Gully Gawk, and Window Peeper, so I mean you can well imagine what those 3 do in their spare time. Those things. They come to town one by one on the 13 nights leading up to Christmas and torture naughty children, and I mean 1 versus 13, the odds are clearly not in your favour, people, to stay inside.
And finally, number 1 now, we have Purple Fingernails. This one comes from the Scary for Kids website, and I'll read it exactly as I found it. There was once a little girl who had a large collection of dolls. One Christmas, she saw a doll in the window of a department store that she absolutely had to have. It had long, flowing blonde hair and a lovely blue dress. But the thing that impressed her the most about the doll was that it had lovely, bold, purple fingernails. When Christmas morning came, she was delighted to find the doll with the purple fingernails lying under the Christmas tree. She played with it all day, and when she went to sleep, she put it on the table at her bedside. That night, the little girl was awakened by strange noises. It was still dark outside. She looked over for her doll, but it was nowhere to be found. The girl, puzzled, got out of bed and walked into the hallway. The door to her parents' room was ajar, and she pushed it open softly and looked in. Her parents appeared to be sleeping soundly, and so she went back to bed. In the morning, she saw the doll with the purple fingernails was sitting on the table by her bed, exactly where she had left it. She assumed that she must have just been having a bad dream, but when she went into her parents' room that morning, she found them both lying dead in a pool of blood. There were 2 purple doll fingernails stabbed into their hearts.